On today's Monday News Pod, the San Diego Padres, as predicted by yours truly, split their series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, which frankly, 2 steps forward, 2 steps backwards. That's why I would say it all year. Kind of epitomizes their season. Going to be going over some of the big performances from this weekend, especially from the Padres rotation, like apparently new demigod Matt Waldron, Fernando, Tatis, Jr., and Jurickson, Profar being all-stars, and answering some of your questions. Without further ado, cue the intro.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, June 9th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be able to find me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiiipeno. If you want to see all my other baseball-related work, go check out justbaseball.com, a very good website, as well as my new podcast, Baseball versus the World, which is about general baseball silliness. Last week we did video games as baseball teams. We did an A-Rod Award show. All sorts of fun stuff over there. But for today's show, guys, we are recapping a big weekend series that kind of went, dare I say, exactly how Millard Thomas and I had predicted on Friday. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And we're bringing back the mailbag, answering some of your questions and comments, some from the YouTube, some from Twitter DMs. So fun episode for sure. And it is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets. That's right, $200 with any winning $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Go check that out. Lockedon.com. FanDuel.com/FanDuel. No, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. What is wrong with me? Anyway, let's get started, everybody. For today's episode, we're going to start first with yesterday's game. And since it was 4 games, we're kind of going to move through these pretty quickly. I did write a bunch of notes, and there's actually not too much to talk about, I think, in some of these games. I think some of these games were just offensive palooza, and in other games were, the Padres that we've unfortunately grown accustomed to this year, which is a team that, 34 and 35, like at least they're not terrible, at least, right? They're only 1 game under 500, but it is really unfortunate for them to have such a nice stretch, and then they get swept by the Angels, and then they have this D-back series that they couldn't gain any ground in. But at least they didn't lose ground, so that's a positive. They lose the last game of the series, though, unfortunately, 9-3. A couple things, though. Yes, so this one was a little bit frustrating, and there's a couple very specific reasons for that. First of all, coming into the game, the Arizona Diamondbacks weren't hitting very well against sliders, which was Adam Mazur, making his second career start, which was his put-away pitch. That's basically his highest graded pitch is his slider. Diamondbacks ranked, I believe, like 17th in weighted on base and 24th in expected weighted on base against sliders. So for that, I was like, okay, this could be cool. This could potentially give us, even if it is his second start, And not to mention, it was also a bullpen day for the Diamondbacks. So there was things in place to potentially give the Padres the win, despite the fact that it is a young rookie pitcher. And unfortunately, you got the young rookie pitcher. 8 earned runs on 8 hits over just 3 innings. He walked 3, struck out 2. Not a lot of good here, man. Basically not at all. Completely tanked the game. And the Padres offense actually fought back a little bit. Like I said, 9-3, but they fought back kind of immediately. And there was a vibe that if this thing didn't get too far out of hand, if Adam Mazur didn't have one of the worst starting pitching performances that the Padres have had this year, then it would have been at least a little bit more attainable. And I'm not blaming Adam Mazur at all. He's a young lad. This is not a top 1 prospect who was drafted at the age of 13 and has 3 Cy Youngs already. No, this was Adam Mazur, and he's going to need time. And I think that what you saw here is while his slider is his highest grade pitch and his best put-away pitch, all those secondary things, not even necessarily his fastball, but his curve especially, it just wasn't working. It wasn't fooling guys. He was getting absolutely torpedoed in this whole game. Basically, all the highest exit velos belonging to Diamondbacks in this game, and it was off of pitches that, weren't necessarily, he needs some fine-tuning. So I'm not freaking out about Adam Mazur in the slightest. It's just unfortunate for the reasons I mentioned. D-back's propensity to struggle against sliders, and then the fact that it was a bullpen. So that's unfortunate. But for me, the only other things about this, like I said, it actually, there was a vibe early on in this where it was like, oh shoot, like the Padres are kind of making a comeback here. Unfortunately, there was more bad here, right? So first of all, I should mention, in the inning that kind of blows up for Adam Mazur, which was the top of the second inning, that's kind of when things fall apart. Luis Campusano, man. The Hive, look, I know that I've been doing this bit for a really long time. I've been doing it for a while, and I stand by some of it. I really do. But Campuzano's defense is a problem. He has one mistake in this game that probably won't show up, I don't think, on the stat sheet necessarily. But he has a really bad tag against, I believe it was Lourdes Gurriel Jr. or Ketel Marte, one of the two, where the throw is in time. It's just that it felt like he didn't like reach out and do more with that throw. Like it just wasn't a very good tag. And it's just little things like that that are really frustrating about Campuzano, is why he might be someone who is going to be on the outside looking in at some point. I think that Higashioka, and this might sound crazy, but like I think he deserves a few more games, and I think they're starting to give him more. One, just because maybe Campuzano's tired, and two, because I think that he's just not going to kill you defensively the way that Campuzano has been. And if Campuzano isn't hitting, which he isn't, he's basically a batting average guy only in theory, because he does not take a lot of walks at all, and he's just not hitting the ball very hard. So that's the problem. So that's why I'm thinking like, ooh man, might have to put Higgy in the lineup more. And he actually has a home run this weekend, but other than that, just really poor defensive play from him. He does moderately make up for it. You know, he does drive in an RBI the next inning. Unfortunately, in that next inning, which is, like I said, it was like right after that, in the bottom of the second inning, Luis Campuzano scores hits a single, allowing Donovan Solano to score. It's bases loaded, 1 out, and he gets that big hit. And then, unfortunately, Luis Arraez kills all the momentum that they've had. Luis Arraez has 11 double plays that he's grounded into this year, and he had 18 all of last year. So I don't think that that's crazy, but it is just a little bit of note that I think one thing about Arraez is he has had some crushing double plays. Now, he's still hitting unbelievably with the Padres, and he's probably going to win himself another batting title, but overall, he still has a 400 on-base percentage with the Padres, and that's kind of what I care about the most. 840 OPS. He's a negative defensively, but bottom line is he's been very good. He does go hitless in this game, but overall he's been fine. But that double play was pretty crushing, and that stunk. But Jurickson Profar, home run in this game, as well as Tatis to dead center field, by the way, from Tatis. Just absolutely crushed it. The hardest, what was it, the hardest hit ball? The second hardest hit ball of the game, next to Christian Walker's single. But man, Tatis is friggin' back, and Jurickson Profar is awesome. Now we're going to talk about them a little bit more, so I'm not going to talk about this game from them specifically. But other than that, Jackson Merrill, again, Padres fighting back. Like after that bottom of the second inning, you get the Profar home run in the third inning, in the bottom of the third inning, and then you have Jake Cronenworth drawing a walk, David Peralta gets hit by a pitch, and then Jackson Merrill flies out on a potentially a pretty good play by outfield. I think it was Lourdes Gurriel Jr. So that was unfortunate. It's not like it had the greatest expected batting average, but still was a nice little play. It was just a little frustrating. But other than that, not too much to talk about. This game won't help us in the inconsistency allegations, right? So don't get me wrong, it was going to be a tough one just because of Adam Mazur, but for the reasons I mentioned. And again, inconsistency. This reminds me very much of the Marlins series from a couple weeks ago, or maybe a week and a half ago, I forgot when, where the Padres just killed them for 2 straight games, and the third game they got killed, right? It's that inconsistency of this team that's so maddening, I think. But hey, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how the rest of it pans out. But it's still early, I think, kind of. Look, guys, I'm trying to be positive, and frankly, I can never get a leaning onto what you guys want, because I get people saying I'm too negative, and then I get people saying I'm not being objective. I just make up your minds, people. But anyway, so really bad last game. I would have liked it to go a little bit better than it did, but at least he split the series. And no, I have no issues with Adam Mazur whatsoever. He's going to need time, and again, like I said, he's not even the top pitching prospect for the Padres. Lesko and Snelling are still ahead of him, right? So give him a little bit of a second. It was rough. It was rough. And the D-backs have guys that can hit the ball hard. And frankly, maybe they were just due. So, it happens. It happens. But folks, that's not the only game that happened. We had some other big action-packed games. The next one I didn't see a lot of, but it did have one very special thing that we got to talk about. And that is one Sir Matt Waldron, ladies and gentlemen. My gosh, Matt Waldron. And let me tell you, Matt Waldron has been just everything you can ask for. Again, this team has so many guys that have been showing up, and guys that you don't necessarily expect to show up. I mean, Jurickson Profar is the king of that. but guys you don't necessarily expect. So add him onto the pile of things that were not a guarantee. That's Matt Waldron. We're going to talk about that in just a second, guys. But first, I want to get through some of the old ad reads. And first, I want to talk about Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades. Supplyhouse.com, guys. It is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done righto. You can shop a complete inventory of over 2,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. That's right, coast to coast, man. Just like me. I'm covering the team from Jersey, and they're all the way on the West Coast. So Supply House, you could say we have something in common. Not really, but still, you get my point. Need help with an order? They also have experts that can help you out and industry-leading, friendliest folks out there. So get that checked out. And it's real people, too. It's not like some AI weird voicemailer thing. So go check that out, guys. It's really fantastic. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Well, that's not all, folks. No. One more thing, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it's FanDuel. You know FanDuel by now. I mean, come on. And we said them at the top of the podcast. We've been working with them forever. And sometimes, you're sitting there and you're realizing, you know what, man? It's summertime. Who doesn't like the summertime? I don't personally, but ignore that for the sake of the ad. It's baseball season, guys, obviously. It's also WNBA season. It's NBA final season. It's NHL Stanley Cup playoff season, I think. Right? Yeah, I think the Panthers and someone are still playing. I don't follow too much. But with FanDuel, you can bet on whatever you want, from player props, money lines, spreads, over-unders, all sorts of stuff they've got over there. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's just $5, guys. $200 you can use to bet on everything from even, World Series MVPs, or I should say the National League MVP. Maybe you should put Profar. Who knows? You could go check that out and hit one out of the park. FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, free and available on all platforms. Your team every day. You know how it goes, including the old tube of the U. So go check that out. If you want to see, Tatis is by himself today, by the way, as the bobblehead. It's because I'm introducing someone at the end of the show. Oh, that's going to be fun. But first, guys, let's talk about Matt Waldron. In Saturday's game, Padres absolutely dominate this one, 13-1. Firstly, let's go through the offense first because it's actually pretty simple. Luis Arias, 2 for 6 in this one. Weird, right? It's weird seeing him not get more than 3 hits at a big wipeout like this. But anyway, Fernando Tatis Jr., he's 1 for 4 in this one with a double and a walk. Jurickson Profar, he gets 2 walks in this game. So yeah, you might be like, whoa, what's going on? Who the heck did it? It was Jake Cronenworth, 2 for 5 in this game with 4 RBIs and a home run. Absolute blast at one point. Donovan Solano gets in on the action as well. He gets an RBI. David Peralta quietly been a little bit better lately, by the way, for the Padres. Slash line is not amazing, but as of late, he's been really good. I think he has an 8 game hit streak, something like that. His overall slash line of 241, 333, 310 is not good, but that's been of late. He was hitting 160 a week ago, so he's been a lot better. And again, that's what I like about this Padres team. There's more depth. I like that they can throw out a Peralta who's at least okay, and then you've got Solano who's been really good for this team too. And then you've got obviously Manny Machado when he comes back, and then you've got Luis Arias who's been awesome. So and then Tyler Wade, who is a really good bench utility piece. One, because I don't think his defense is too bad, and also because of the speed. So love that. Also in this game, big game for Jackson Merrill, 2 for 4. He's been really bouncing back lately. So while it seems like he hit the rookie wall as of late, he's been bouncing back a lot more. His problem is still lefties and tapping into power. The power I'm not expecting, frankly. And I think that's going to be a next year thing. But to get better against lefties, I hope that he's just not a liability against lefties the way he's been this year. But 2 for 4 in this game with 2 doubles and an RBI, also draws a walk. And then Ha-Seong Kim also, he hits a home run in this one, 3 RBIs, a 3-run blast. And Kyle Higashioka gets it on it too, 2 for 5 of this one with a home run as well. So just offensive palooza from the Padres, absolutely killing Diamondbacks pitching. Ryan Nelson, you are dead. We killed him dead. And same thing for Logan Allen, who I believe, is that a former Padre? Yes, former Padre Logan Allen. That was in the Clevenger trade, if I'm not mistaken. So shouts to the Padres offense. Not much to say there. And frankly, there's not much I can say, right? Because I actually lost my power on Saturday. Crazy, right? Lost my power, so I couldn't watch the game. I know I had my phone, but like, let me tell you, in my neighborhood, like using data and like not using the Wi-Fi, it just doesn't, like, it works in terms of like getting Twitter notifications and maybe a couple texts. And you know what I mean? Stuff like that, but I could not stream the game. So that was unfortunate. I had to watch the highlights and stuff. So I only got to see a little bit. But first of all, incredible. I was just talking about Jackson Merrill. At the very minimum, Jackson Merrill's defense is awesome. And his bat is clearly better than a Trent Grisham. So this has been just a clean upgrade. And he has much more potential down the line, I think. While I do think that the power is going to take time, just such a great player and an amazing catch with a really low percentage. And when you see the zoomed out too, oh my gosh, just watch that again. Genuinely like an underrated play of the weekend. There's like a catch in the college baseball playoffs that you guys are probably going to see highlighted all day by the time you're watching this podcast. So no one's going to remember the Merrill thing, but man, what a catch by Merrill. And lastly, Matt Waldron, who I want to talk about really quickly. Just incredible. Last 6 starts, 1.78 ERA, and his strikeout rate has actually increased 28.7%. His overall numbers on the year are 3.76 ERA, 3.28 expected ERA, and a 3.25 FIP. So this isn't some, oh, wow, he's been really benefiting from just weak contact. You know what I mean? This is like a guy who's just been like coasting. It's like, no, actually his numbers are pretty okay. Now, don't get me wrong. He doesn't throw particularly hard. His fastball is not his ace pitch, right? But he's been doing a lot better, and he's just limiting hard contact. And he's getting better with some of the other pitches. His sweeper in particular, it bites guys, especially on the inside, especially against lefties. I think it's been especially good. So he had a lot of nice moments. It wasn't like a stud start, but 6 innings, only 1 earned run on 3 hits, 2 walks, 4 Ks. Again, he's been on fire lately. And by the way, dare I say the only thing I got right about this year is that a couple weeks ago, what feels like a month ago, I think at this point, a bunch of people were tweeting at me saying, like, you need to stop, this guy stinks. And I'm like, I really think that it was just the D-back start. And it's been clear. And he got his revenge against them, had a really nice start. Kolek is brought in this game as well. 2 innings, 1 walk, 3 Ks, no 1 runs, only just 1 hit allowed. Johnny Brito also appears in this one. Shouts to Kolek. I mean, I guess you can hope that he's going to turn it around a little bit, but it does stink that I think by relief pitchers this year, the most hits giving up are like Stephen Kolek, Johnny Brito, and Tim Hill. If I'm not mistaken, I think Padres Data Daily posted that, and I was like, of course, they're all Padres. I know Tim Hill isn't anymore, but that's unfortunate. But Matt Waldron, excellent stuff. Excellent stuff from him. And frankly, I think it's time to start talking about him like a regular good pitcher, rather than what I've been doing lately was talking about how he's good for a 5. He might just be regular good. The soft contact, obviously the knuckleball is his awesome pitch that we all love talking about, but the sweeper and sinker are getting a lot better. So I'm curious. Guys, this is exciting because it's this random type of stuff that you need to do better. So I'm taking an eye on the sweeper and the sinker to get better. We'll have to see, though. We'll have to see. Really impressed with Matt Waldron. But there's more, guys. Let's talk about Friday's game, all right, in which the Padres also won by a fantastic amount. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about Friday's first, actually, because Friday's was the depressing one, and I want to end on a light note. So Thursday's game, the Padres lose by a score of 4-3. Speaking of Matt Waldron, I think Randy Vasquez deserves a little bit more of a leash before we start getting mad at him. He's still young. He's still new. And remember that this was the same vibe, especially that a lot of listeners and stuff had in regards to Matt Waldron. Matt Waldron had like a high mid-5s ERA. He was really struggling. He gets lit up against Arizona. Randy Vasquez, I think his thing has just been, he's had a couple quick pulls that haven't been great, right? So that's not awesome. But even still, I think he deserves a little bit more time. But we'll have to see how it transpires, I guess, as time goes along. But 6 2/3, 3 earned runs on 6 hits, no walks, 3 Ks. That's not a losing starting line. I think that he was okay. And again, I really would like to see a little bit more from him. That would be awesome. But remember that he's also filling in for someone. You know what I mean? That's an important part of this too, is he's filling in. Give the man a second, folks. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? Give him just a second. I think that Randy's still got some enticing stuff. I think. And I hope, frankly, that I'm not like making anything up. So we'll have to see. But all in all, decent game from him. The problem is, unfortunately, Jeremiah Estrada was finally due. Yeah, I know it stinks, but this is what happens sometimes in baseball. What can I say? He gives up an earned run and just gets one out, walks one, all that stuff. And Neil De Los Santos actually works out of the trouble. By the way, really underrated player. He's not a star, especially in this Padres bullpen. He has not been a star because you've got Estrada, you've got Suarez, all those guys. Even in terms of just fame, you've got Yuki Matsui, right? So you have all that, but in general, he's just been like a steady guy. And I think that he really is like the most underrated Padres player. I really do. So he's been great in this game. Adrian Morejon also is okay. But unfortunately, the Padres just aren't able to get enough timely hits in this one. Mainly, we have a little bit of an incident at the end of the game in which Jake Cronenworth is robbed by the umpires. Really bad call. Mudd absolutely loses his mind on the Padres home broadcast. Just loses it. And it stinks because Jake Cronenworth has been good this year. So it's really rough to see against Paul Sewald, who, by the way, is a righty, so it's not like Cronenworth has a super disadvantage there. He's been good all year, Cronin. So it really stinks to see him get robbed there. But also, the Padres had their chances. I hated in this game, I just want to throw this out there, the Profar bunt. Especially when they ended up bringing in a lefty to face Jake Cronenworth. And don't get me wrong, it ended up working. The Padres do score in that inning to cut the lead a little bit. That was great, but it was also a fluky hit. Kind of a blooper in no man's land that allows Tatis and I believe... who was it? I forgot who it was that scored. Let me see. Tatis and Arise to score, but it was also a little bit of a blooper. It's not like Jake hit the ball like particularly awesome, and it was a bad matchup that they were able to plan for. But again, I'll still take it. Don't get me wrong, but again, like I said, not all that great. You know what I mean? Not the best hit in the world, at least in my opinion. But I could be wrong. But that was just a disappointing game on Thursday. Let's talk about the one that's really fun, the Friday game. This one being started by one Sir Michael King. And here's the thing about one Sir Michael King is we've been on him a lot this year. We've been on him a whole lot. But this game, he did a lot. And there's actually a couple things that I've noticed that he's been getting better at that might explain it. Look, I'm not super smart, but I have a little bit of stats for you guys. And we're going to recap that. We're going to finish the recaps of these games, talk about this one, which is mostly going to be talking about Michael King. And then we got to talk about Jurickson, Profar, and Tatis because holy dear God, are these guys amazing. And then answer some of your questions. But before we do that, I just want to take a second, guys, to talk to you about the site that everybody knows when it comes to being professional, ladies and gentlemen, and that is LinkedIn. Folks, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, driving higher revenue and increased sales performance. So if you're an employer, if you're one of those people, if you're trying to make your sales, let me tell you, the folks over at the Linked of the Inn have you covered. Helps you find the right buyers. You can surface key signals, which jobs you're prioritizing, all that sort of stuff. Shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to connect. And fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform. I think that's the biggest selling point. Everyone's on LinkedIn, folks. Got to join the wave. Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. Let me tell you. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day, 2 months. We're going to be past the All-Star break by the time this thing ends for you at linkedin.com/lockedon. That is linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let's let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar, like a Tatis today. Remember, linkedin.com/lockedon and get started. And just like that, folks, we are back in the waning moments of this podcast. Hopefully, we're not going to go too over the time. I usually like to keep it around 33, under 30 minutes or so. But we got a lot to talk about. So first, the game, Michael King. Michael King in this game was very good. He's got a 3.58 ERA on the season, and he's been very good of late. He has not given up more than 3 runs in his last 4 starts, which is very good. Last bad start was against Colorado, but he's been good. He's been solid, and I was actually doing a little bit of digging because I didn't have a lot of time, but I actually looked up a couple things. First of all, Michael King, as of late, one thing that I've noticed is he hasn't been having as many strikeouts. He has not had the same strikeout rate he had a little bit early on in the season, and he hasn't had those like dynamite performances. So while his strikeout rate hasn't been excelling, that's not really what has been better with him lately. His overall chase rate over these last few games has gone up. He's getting more batters to swing. Outside zone swing percentage is way up, and it's been a steady incline, by the way, if you look it up. So that's good, i.e. it hasn't been up and down. He's been up and down, but not the swing and miss rate on outside stuff. So that's been nice. It also is, and you've seen that with more outside swing percentages, with more batters swinging at his bad pitches and pitches that aren't necessarily in the zone, you've seen it's coincided with his ERA getting lower. So that's really cool. And another thing is, I'd like more, I like more ground balls from him. I'd like to see if he can generate a little bit more ground balls before I feel comfortable. Just fundamentally, if you're not getting a lot of ground balls and your strikeout rate isn't high, I just want to be a little bit careful because, I don't know, the best case scenario of that is like Framber Valdez. But for me, I'm like, okay, so you're not getting as many swings and misses. You're getting people to chase, though, but you're not getting a big ground ball rate. Thankfully, though, the hard hits have been a little bit better, just a little bit. His average exit velocity is still top 6% in Major League Baseball, so that's really good. Or, I'm sorry, top 9%. And I think another thing that I noticed, his repertoire has become a lot more balanced by each game. And I'm going to put up the graph a little bit if you guys are on YouTube. I just think that that's a good thing. That he's been, it seems like this might show that he's been figuring things out. And if you look at the graph, it shows he started out using fastballs not a lot, and then it looks like he's been leaning into more of a direction of a more diverse, more balanced repertoire where you don't know exactly what's going to be happening. Like that, his last start, he used all the pitches basically an even amount. It's not like he didn't use any at all. You know what I'm saying? Like his slider, he's using a lot more lately. Or I'm sorry, his sinker, he's been using a lot more lately. I just like the fact that we've seen more chases and the fact that he's using his other pitches more. And it makes sense, frankly. He's still transitioning from being mostly a long inning guy who did have some starts, don't get me wrong, but mostly a long inning reliever for the Yankees. And I like that, okay, maybe this is showing us that he just has some things to figure out and tinker with. He's been a lot better. Sorry about that. He's been a lot better as time has gone on. So I'm really happy with Michael King. And I like that, as I've said, we've needed some consistency from him because he's had too many of those 11K, 10K starts and then follows it up with a dud, right? So hopefully he can continue this. I like this version of Michael King. It's very, very good. And then also, Jurickson, Profar, and Fernando Tatis Jr. They actually, in this game, also hit a couple home runs in this one. Profar has the big game going 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs, a double, and a home run. Tatis, he goes 1 for 4 with an RBI and a home run in this one as well. Both of them have been absolutely on fire lately. And in terms of all qualified National League outfielders, they are currently first in wins above replacement. Those are the top two. And in terms of all outfielders, it's like Profar is 7th and Tatis is like 11th, I think, something like that. First of all, it cannot be stressed enough that Tatis still being much better than some other outfielders in baseball, despite not being at his best, is great. And yes, I had voiced over the last week, before he started getting hot, that I was still a little bit nervous about him. I wasn't freaking out, but my thing was, hey, it has been a long time. And while expected stats are really helpful for telling you what can happen in the future, or at least giving you a better guess as to, hey, wait, this guy who's hitting 450, like this is clearly all luck, or vice versa, right? So I think that stuff matters. But when it's been happening for more than a year, then I'm like, okay, like at some point I need to see it. Maybe there's something else going on here. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a great example. All of his hard hit, all that stuff, if you look up his StatCast profile, it's great. But then in real life, he's just not as good of a player. So there's more to it. But with Tatis, he's been on fire lately. I think made a good defensive play also this weekend. I forgot which game. Might have been the game that I missed. Really good stuff from him. Jurickson Profar is crazy. From what I understand, it just seems like he's tapped into power. He's using a different batting stance. It's much more open. There's a great article on Fangraphs about this. And while, yes, I think it's going to decline a little bit, he's been amazing. And I don't think that it's going to decline by that much. Like, I think this is going to mostly continue. I don't think he's going to be a 4... What's his on-base percentage right now? Right? Like, what's Profar's on-base percentage? I don't think he's going to be a 419 on-base guy. But I think he's going to be a good player. Like, I think he's going to be a pretty good on-base percentage guy because he's always had good walk skills. I just think that he's tapping into his power more. He has a leg kick. His stance is more open. I think this is mostly legit, and I think we need to start talking about it that way. Which is what one person wrote into. Let's get into the mailbag really quickly, guys. Which is what one person mentioned in the YouTube comments, folks. That's right. I'm always watching y'all. Always watching y'all. At one point, says at Silas Robert Shaw 8122 on YouTube, at one point will we start to expect Profar to continue being this hot? I keep expecting him to go 0 for 40, and he has continued to hit. Agreed. I think after this weekend especially, and especially after diving deeper into the numbers that show it's not like this guy has a 200-point difference in his weighted on base and his expected weighted on base. It's not like he's not hitting the ball hard. He is. Not as hard as, a Soto and an Ohtani, but he's hitting the ball hard enough to show, okay, this is clearly not totally fluky. And he puts together good at bats. So I agree with you, Mr. Shaw. I agree with you. It's gotten to the point where you just need to expect this. Is he barreling it as hard as, but that's okay. The only thing with Profar that isn't going to change, in my opinion, is the defense. He had a couple of balls that weren't great this weekend either. Now, it doesn't matter when you're this good offensively. I think that just means that he won't be like an 8-win player or anything like that this season, but Profar's just been stupendous, man. He's been so good, and the Padres are lucky to have him, and I agree. It's time to just start treating this like this is just Profar now. It's amazing to see. And I asked a bunch of baseball fans, and they were like, I was like, hey, look, when was the last time someone like Profar happened? And what I mean by that is 31 years old, mostly, and I don't mean this as an insult, like a journeyman sort of player who's been to a bunch of different clubs, Rangers, Rockies, A's, now Padres, that had been okay, like he was in Major League Baseball, in my opinion, mostly because of his plate discipline. That's kind of like the one thing he had. But with all those injuries as a top prospect, when has it happened that a guy comes in and has never done anything like this, and in his age 31 season on a 1-year, $1 million contract turns into this? The only example that someone brought up for me that was close enough was R.A. Dickey, because he had like his Cy Young season when he was 37, I think, or 36, and he debuted really late. But even still, it's really crazy. As I am actually recording while the Yankee game is on, and Trey Grisham just homered, which just made me laugh. 3-run home run for him. Good for him. Hope they beat the Dodgers. But yeah, I agree with you, Robert. I think that it's time to just start talking about this. Like, stop expecting it to get worse. This is not like Hosmer from 2022, and this is certainly not like Adam Frazier or anybody like that. It's just not that. The data and everything we're seeing does not point to that. So, shouts to Jurickson, Profar. We love you. Next question, though. We got to keep running through these. At LFGSD Padres and at Ramamurdy9938, they both talked about the bobblehead. Padres says, Pac-Man has to go. You need some more Padres bobbleheads. And then Ramamurdy says, replace Pac-Man with a Manny bobblehead to get him going. Well, folks, I don't have that right now. So for temporarily, I want you guys to leave me comments or DM me who should be the Padre guy that I get. But for now, we're going to have an ever-rotating chair of random little figurines that I have because I am a nerd like that. And today's is Mr. Pikachu. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is Pikachu with a headband in his ninja outfit. If anyone watches Naruto, you will get the reference. He is going to be by my side with Tatis for the time being until we find something else and until I just replace it with somebody else. We'll see. New bit for the podcast. What will Javi use as part of his bobblehead figurine collection or whatever? So look forward to that, guys, and thank you for writing in about that. It seems like everybody got sick of Pac-Man. Speaking of Ramamurdy, he DM'd me asking, for tomorrow's show, why is the NL so bad this season? Given where the Padres are at, what should AJ Preller do at this point? First of all, the second question is a little bit meaty, and I think we're going to be talking about it anyway, and especially with the rumors of Garrett Crochet. In my opinion, I just don't want to overcommit and trade a lot of this farm because I just don't trust this team. I don't trust its core. I don't trust its nucleus. I don't trust the organization. So I'm not trying to get rid of top prospects. I'm sorry. I'm just not trying to do it. Unless Ohtani becomes available, I just don't want to do that because we keep seeing that has not amounted to consistent success. If we knew they were going to be a playoff team and you made a big trade, I'd be scared by like, okay, if they're like 10 games above 500 right now, I'd be like, okay, you're doing this because you want to make a better, you want to have a better shot at the World Series, not better shot at the playoffs. So that's kind of my distinction. And he said, also, and just to be clear, trading the farm for Garrett Crochet is not what I want. Rather give kids like Mazur and Snelling chances if Musgrove and Darvish are out for a long time. I agree. I think that if Musgrove and Darvish are out for a long time, that will not happen, though. I think that there is a reason why we got those reports very eerily, like At the same sort of time, we heard about Darvish and Musgrove being out for a little bit, that we got a report that they're interested in a guy that I didn't even know was frankly going to be available on the market. I thought Eric Feed of the White Sox was more in the Padres price range. So we'll see. It's gonna be a wild deadline. I really think we're gonna see some crazy stuff from one sir, AJ Preller. Another comment from Kaz, another longtime follower of the show. How do you feel about us winning a game and then us losing a game? By the way, love the pod and go Padres. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this kind of explains the full season. That's why on Friday, Millard and I were like, a split is the cliche answer when you're predicting a series of 4, but it really does feel so poetically, like, just tonally right for what this Padres season has been, which is 2 steps forward, 2 steps backwards, sometimes 3 and then 2 backwards, and sometimes 4 and 5 backwards, right? Like, that's just what this team has been. And it's unfortunate. And again, that speaks to why I don't want to fully commit. I just don't think like a Garrett Crochet will fix some of the problems the Padres have, because we keep seeing that it's someone new. It's always something new. They're never firing on all cylinders, irrespective of whoever it is that's playing for them. So we'll see. But again, thank you for the question, sir. Another comment that I thought was just a fair comment that someone made at _MJG said, I don't see the logic behind the thought that MLB would be deadening the balls. Runs per game and batting averages have been on the decline since before the turn of the century. One of the reasons MLB implemented the rule changes was to get offense up. I say there's zero credibility to the notion that MLB is deadening the balls. I don't think, maybe not deadening the balls, but I think we definitely know that the balls were juiced at one point. That's what I meant with Millard. Like, they're not using those balls anymore. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Like, the other thing is this, which I also brought up on that podcast, is maybe this is just an anomalous thing. 2 years ago, we had like 6 no-hitters or 5 in 1 month, and everyone was like, oh my God, this is so dumb. Like, no-hitters don't mean anything anymore. And guess what happened? We had like none for the rest of the year. Like, sometimes it could be a little bit anomalous. And I think that just in general, this has just been a bad year for offense. Like, Corbin Carroll's been bad. Ronald Acuna Jr. is out for the season. He wasn't good. A lot of the Braves hitters haven't been good. There's just been a lot of disappointing players. Not necessarily teams. Phillies, Yankees, Braves, Dodgers, you know. There's been a lot of good in a while. Like, Baltimore has been really good. All that sort of stuff. Cleveland, right? The Royals, like, there's been a lot of good teams, but I just think overall there's been a lot of underperforming stars this year. It's just one of those years. It happens. Moving on, though, to the next question. What about, at JTB572 says, what about the A's catcher, Shea Langeliers? Interesting. First of all, the A's are a team that the Padres have some sort of relationship with. I imagine that Shea Langeliers would not cost all that much. He's an interesting one. 101 WRC, 103 WRC plus, that'll play. 201 batting. He's not a great hitter necessarily, but he's a power guy. 12 home runs on the year so far. He does strike out a lot, which is frustrating, but I will take that. And most importantly, he's pretty good behind the dish. That is the number one thing. So honestly, really good note there, man. Really good note there. And he hasn't been like great behind the dish necessarily in his career, but he's shown improvements this year. In terms of his defensive run save, last year he was -13, and his framing was really bad. This year, 0 defensive run save, which isn't obviously not great, but he has not been libelous. And then he's a guy that can just hit a home run every now and then. I think that's the type of guy that could really be pretty okay for this team. Again, he's not great. Blocks above average isn't great, but his framing is he's at a series. He's not killing you. 1.1 F4 on the season. I don't think he would cost so much. So, sir, you might be onto something, and I want to come back to that later when we talk more and get closer to the trade deadline. But Shea Langeliers, I don't hate it. I don't hate it whatsoever. And Lord knows, hey, even if he was great, the A's have made so many bad trades and so many bad business decisions, obviously, that you might be able to get him for nothing. So I'm a fan of it. At Koji_H says, the Padres have embraced the first law of thermodynamics that requires them to do an equal and opposite reaction to remain a 500 team. Yeah. Absolutely right. Another comment. And this was just a well-said thing. At F. William Coney 28 says, sorry to see Marcano banned for life for gambling. He was an above-average player for the Bucks and worked so hard to make it to the minors and then MLB from all the turmoil in his native Venezuela. He made a poor decision, needs help with gambling addiction, and now faces the sports death penalty in MLB. With help and recovery, hope he can continue his career overseas. I agree, man. Like, I know we make jokes about all this stuff, but it stinks. Like, it really stinks when you see stuff like this happen. Just point blank. Hate to see it. Absolutely. And then last thing, folks. At Ponzies, I don't know how you say it, or second to last question. What in the world do you mean by sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most? I don't know. It's just a dumb saying I came up with. What do you want from me? You know? I don't know. It's just something I do. Last question, though, from at K. Turetsky. K. Turetsky, I think is how you say it. Now that you and Musgrove are out, are you ready to sign Bauer yet? He's tearing it up in Mexico. He'd give them a chance. No. I don't know how many times I have to get this question to say no. A friend of mine, Emily Nyman, she hosts a podcast called Breaking Balls. I recommend everyone go listen to that. Lindsay Hill, who is one of Bauer's accusers, and you've probably seen her on Twitter. I recommend everyone go hear from her because she talks about this a lot better. And frankly, it's starting to annoy even me how we are a month and something into the season and people still are acting like Bauer is some innocent guy, right? Like, what are we doing, guys? MLB has the videos. There's more to it than just one person that the DA or whatever in that one county threw out the case, which, by the way, doesn't mean that they're innocent. So that's all I'm going to say on it, but I recommend go listening to that episode because they lay it out and kind of dispel a lot of the arguments against Bauer. Frankly, I don't know if the people, if they're still hyping up Bauer, that if they're going to even listen to a podcast like that, because if you're still on this route, I just highly doubt it. But hey, I plead with you to go check that out. And for the love of God, stop. You know what I mean? Do you not know how sports work? You know what I mean? Guys, Greg Hardy, the Cowboys signed him after we literally got photos of her back all messed up and assault rifles and all this stuff because she didn't show up to the thing. The Cowboys still signed her. You know what I mean? Sports teams have never been above this stuff. They know that this guy has way too much. That's what happened. That's why he got such a big suspension. So enough. He's not going back to Major League Baseball, and I don't want him to. And it would not help the Padres. It wouldn't help any team, and no team's going to sign him. So enough. But go listen to that episode if you want to hear more. And frankly, just listen to other people talking and reporting on this situation. But anyway, not to end on a super sour note, guys, thank you for all of your questions and comments. As always, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. The only pod. They may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. We are facing the A's, and they're trotting out 3 lefties. So, folks, prepare yourselves. So, until next time, though, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.